lot, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. I think we're about 24 days, 23 hours, and 30 minutes from kickoff, if I'm correct. I think I'm close. But excuse the math if I'm wrong. But I wanted to say that. Got to start off with a positive note tonight because I have a feeling that people want to talk defense, and there's probably a lot more unanswered questions than answered questions right now through your first full padded practice of fall camp. Tomorrow, Cedric Baxter, I think number one in, if I'm not mistaken, on three. He's number one running back on threes, and then I think 247 has him at number 2 or number 3. Is supposed to commit tomorrow. And I actually messed with the class calculator on 247 today. And if we get Cedric Baxter, we will move up to the number 3 spot in the country, which is a good place to be.
Yeah, and he's your second running back in the class behind Trey Wisner. Again, another weapon that would be added to the 2023 class to go along with the guys like Jonte Cook, Ryan Niblett, just to name a few at the skill position players. But I've talked about this guy. I've tweeted out about this guy. Has compositions to Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, an upright runner, 6'1", 215 pounds is what he's listed, but I think he can get up to probably 225 and still carry that speed. Again, Ruben Owens is one of those guys that Texas sought early in the 23 cycle. He ended up going to Louisville. They we're talking to Cedric Baxter. They had an offer out to him the whole time. And it looks like this one may end up in Texas's favor. And like you said, it put them up as the number 3 class composite in 247 and just continue this, momentum. You got Darian Gillette last Friday. You add him, and then Jordan Matthews, the cornerback out of Louisiana, commits on the 15th. So positives. I believe it's going to go Texas way, and again, another 23 weapon.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like you said, just keep this momentum going. It felt like we had it going. It was kind of like Niagara Falls, and then all of a sudden the water dried up for about a month there, and everybody started kind of going panicking. I think you have a shot at hell, but what's really going to happen on the defensive side of the ball moving forward, I think, is what's important. How are you going to fill out the rest of the class with those defensive recruits outside of Baxter and outside of Hill? I think to me, once you get Baxter and Hill, you almost close it down unless you get a Deuce Robinson tight end, number 1 tight end in the country. You kind of shut it down to me on the opposite side of the ball, and you just start trying to get your defensive guys, in this class. But I think someone probably will wait to see how we do on defense this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. So if Baxter comes in the class, that'd be 22. Matthews, defensive guy, cornerback, comes in, that'd be 23. And if this class is going to be 29 folks or 29 kids, coming in the 2023 class, I think you really got to start looking at defense. Like Tosoli Akana's taking a visit here, an edge out of Utah, a friend of Leona LaFowle's. So he's an interesting, add to the defense, another edge guy. But you got to start looking at stand-up linebackers. You probably got to start looking at more interior defenders to join Sadir Mitchell. To kind of beef up that part of the room. But as we go through our defensive position previews, let me tell you how we broke it down real quick, because we dropped defensive line, and then the first comment we got tonight was about Prince Dorba. So how we did it was defensive linemen are our interior guys. We broke it down how Texas sports defines their defenders. They define them as defensive linemen, edges, or linebackers. So the guys that are interior are the defensive line, the guys we talked about the other day. The edge players we're going to talk about in the next taped show is going to be Barron Sorrell, Ovia Gofu, DJ Harris, Prince Dorba, and then the freshmen, Jamon Tapp, Justice Finkley, Burke, and Swanson. The reason why I say that is in writing these previews, you found that there was a ton of experience on the defensive line that hadn't been productive, right? And I think we chronicled that pretty well in the video that we put out the other day. And then when you're talking about the edge position players, you're talking about the only one with experience is Ovia Gofu. Now, Barron Sorrell, again, is my breakout player. I love the way he played in the spring game. I love the way he finished out last year's regular season. But after that, you're talking about DJ Harris and Prince Dorba as the returners, and then you're talking about 4 freshmen playing the edge. So that's kind of where it is and how we're going to continue to preview those positions. But that's why those guys weren't a part of the defensive line. We were looking for how Texas defines their players on the defensive side, and we wanted to kind of mirror that when we did the position previews.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about the edges, I think you got to kind of add. It was funny because me and you kind of talked about it. We talked about adding 𝗟𝗏𝗡 and 𝗟𝗏𝗓 into that edge room based on obviously the information that's coming out of fall camp with Tucker Dorsey playing the way he is. Obviously, Jaylan Ford, what he was able to do at the end of last year through spring camp. I think the coaches, all the high praise that he's getting, Jaylan Ford is getting. I think they believe that linebacker room gives them an opportunity to be able to move 𝗟𝗏𝗡 and 𝗟𝗏𝗓 around, not just to the edge, but be able to put him in position. Doesn't have to think as much. Doesn't have to worry about a gap. It's more a mano, put you in the best place, where they feel like you have an opportunity to get to the quarterback. Maybe not from the edge. Hell, you may have both a jack, a buck, 𝗟𝗏𝗓 and 𝗟𝗏𝗓 moving around somewhere with 3 linebackers at some particular point. But I think he gives them a boost at the edge position. But like you said, there's just not a lot of productivity. And Ovie Oghoufo is really the only one that's played real time, coming from Notre Dame and then coming to Texas. He's really the only one that's played a lot of time each and every year. But
yeah, you basically got 42 tackles, and I don't want to ruin the show, but you basically got 42 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks coming back at the edge. That's what you have as far as production. Now, Barron Sorrell played in 6 games, had minimal, snaps to make plays, but you saw flashes. I think Steve Sarkisian used the word flashes the other day when he was talking about guys being more consistent. He's really talking about the defensive lineman. I think he was talking more about Alfred, flashes, and we talked about that, how he makes big plays, and then he'll go games where he doesn't make, you don't recognize 95, and I think that was because he was playing out of position. But we'll see where they play him this year. But you got to manufacture some pressure somehow. Like you said, if it comes from that second level from the linebackers through disguise and scheme and speed, because the big guys in the middle can't get to the quarterback, somehow you got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback in passing downs. But then again, you got to be able to hold up in the run game with smaller guys and keep guards and centers and tackles off of your second level guys so that they can make plays in the run game.
So, Gamers Life, what's your thoughts on Collins and others? He's talking about, I think, the comments where he's talking about it's sad for him to hear. I think he's talking about the comments that are coming out of the fall that you believe you've got guys that are talented enough to perform. I think it's just a productive. I think it's it can't be one play on, one play off, one play on, one play off, one play on, one play off. And I think that's what they're looking for. But in a positive of that, somebody like Vernon Broughton, who you haven't heard a lot about, Steve Sarkisian said in his press conference that he's showing up. You know what I'm saying? He's showing that hunger that they want from the rest of these guys. But I think where we want to hear it from is the guys that have been there year after year after year after year, and if you went and listened to our defensive line preview, and hopefully you did, it's one of those things where the proof is in the pudding, right? And until you show some improvement on the field, it's hard to believe that you're going to get improvement on the field. It's kind of where it is. A lot of this is going to be coach talk and press conferences. And, obviously they're going to ask him who's showing up, who's not showing up. And I can tell you that Steve Sarkisian's a pretty honest guy. And he's not afraid to call people out. Well, I expected more from, these 2 players, but they haven't shown up. I like what I see from these 2 players. But I think the proof is in the pudding. And until you see a Collins, until you see a Sweat, until you see a Coburn, it's hard to believe in what they're going to produce this year. I think the leading tackler out of that entire group last year was Ojimo with 29, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
With 29 tackles. Yep. And then somebody talked about space eating, right? Like, well, they're there to take on blocks. Yeah, absolutely. But if you play 489 snaps in 12 games, you would think that you would have more than 12 tackles. I mean, maybe way off on this, but you would think that you have more than 12 tackles. And that happened, this last year. And, so we'll kind of see where they go. It sounds like they're going to a less of a gap scheme where guys are having to eat up blocks. So we'll see what they're able to do, getting tackles and pressure to the quarterback. But it's just hard for me to get the burnt orange glasses on about the defense at this point.
I'm going to pull up something real quick too. Greg says, I think PK's scheme is not right for Texas. Again, PK's scheme, these guys have played in Todd Orlando's defense, Chris Ash's defense, and now Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. His players that he currently has were brought in with the premise of an idea, and the guys on the interior, the guys we're talking about, the defensive linemen, most of them are brought in to play Todd Orlando's defense. Coburn's been around for a long time. Moro Jomo's been around for a long time. Devondre Sweat has been around for a long time. And then they went into Chris Ash's defense. Now they're in their third system. I don't know that they played well in any of those systems. And again, that may be the part of it. That may be a part of it. As soon as they get comfortable in a system with a role, they get moved. And again, I'll talk about Alfred Collins. Alfred Collins played inside his freshman year under Chris Ash, and he flashed, like he made plays. And then last year he slides out to defensive end and has less of an impact. Is that the scheme, or is that the player not feeling comfortable with his current position, or is he just not good at performing that? Does that not fit his talent set? So I think it's too early to say that PK's system doesn't fit Texas. And some of the ownership has to be on the players, in my mind, that have been around here for 4 and 5 years. Condre Coburn's a fifth-year senior. Devondre Sweat is a senior. Moro Joma's a senior. Like, eventually you got to see production regardless of what system you're in. And I don't think it's scheme at this point. Now, if we're having the same conversation next year and guys haven't developed, like, you don't start hearing the Vernon Broughtons like you brought up, or the Byron Murphys, and you don't see the level of play picked up, and these guys aren't pushing for starting positions, then I think it may be a scheme thing. But I'm not ready to point the finger at PK just yet, because again, he doesn't. This first group of recruits, the guys we were talking about earlier, Jamon Tapp, Justice Finkley, Ethan Burke, Zach Swanson, and the guys on the defensive line that we talked about the other day, Aaron Bryant, Christopher Ross, like, they just got here. Those are PK's first recruits into his system. So I don't know that we can say that just yet.
Yeah. So Dre asked a question here. Do you think it's better for the defense if PK is on the field instead of press box? I think if you trust who you have in the press box, I can't remember. Is PK on the field or is he in the press box?
He's in the press box.
He is in the press
Blake.
Box.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or he was last year. I don't know.
I think Choate was Choate was probably the guy that he was talking to on the field to make changes. To be able to relay the calls to the defense. I don't know, because you look at guys like Britt Venables, who's at Clemson, that's needed a get back coach for the last 15 years. You look at a guy like Muschamp that was on the field that needed a get back coach.
I've always been.
I think it's. Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I've always just been of the thought, if I can get players' feedback with them looking at me in my eyes, then I would love to be on the field. But for some, they want to be able to see a 22 version. They want to see the whole field. But to me, player feedback is a lot more important as a coach. But it's wherever Steve Sarkisian probably wants them. Like you said, if he has an on-field coach for that specific side of the ball that he wants down there, then you got to split up your staff. The best way, probably the head coach. I'm sure. Pete gives, Steve what he would like to do, but ultimately I think it's up to Steve Sarkisian where they plant themselves on game day.
This is actually a pretty good comment. Scheme and player fit is vital for the defensive coordinator. Can't win an off-road challenge with a Corvette.
So that's what I'm saying. Brandon, thank you for that comment. Brandon gets it. Like say you were like, he can use a car analogy, and I wish you would have kept it up there so I could reference it. But like you said, it's like, the parts to the car or whatever, they've changed. The parts are still there, but the car has changed. The model's changed. They don't fit in that particular car. And then they get a new one and a new one and a new one. And it's just hard with, like I said, the churning of the coaches and the systems for the players to get comfortable. Like I said, I think it's a mix of both. With a player, and he said it better than I did. Scheme and the players have to fit together, and that's why I can't point the finger at Pete Kwiatkowski, because these aren't the guys that he brought into the program. The problem is we don't have enough patience to let a coach, head coach, coordinators get their group of 4 classes in before we start talking about relieving them. historically. That's why I think winning is important. Like, they have to win in order to earn the trust of the fan base and the donors and the alumni to stay around long enough to get this thing off the ground. And like I said, 8-5, 9-4, whatever it is, just go be moving in the right direction. We don't need an undefeated season. We just need to be progressing.
Yeah, I want to bring up a comment from Steve Sarkisian's press conference on Monday, talking about defensive backs. Sark was asked about the length at cornerback. Was it a focus in the offseason, given the emphasis he put on eliminating easy completions? And he wants to play like up on the line of scrimmage. He said, I just believe in 6 foot or taller corners. He said, Terrence Brooks, Ryan Watts, Jalen Gilbo, Xavier Bryce, Austin Jordan fit more of the body type Texas will recruit going forward. That tells you exactly. He doesn't sugarcoat things, right? He believes, honestly, that the guys that he currently has in that defensive backfield do not fit the mold of what he wants to see in that defensive backfield for this scheme, in the way that they want it, and the way they want to run it and be aggressive, and so on and so forth. So I think that's why you will see some changes. It would not surprise me if you didn't see, 1 change, maybe 2 changes with that defensive backfield before the season starts, if not going into Big 12 play, because I think he wants to. I think some of these guys are real young that he wants to play, and obviously scheme is important in understanding what they need to do from the defensive side of the ball. But I truly believe he knows what he wants on that defense. He has the guys to do it. It's just, when does he want to put them in? And again, he said this before. When all things are equal, right? Everybody knows the scheme. Whoever has the highest trajectory, regardless of what class they're in, they will start. And I think that is your answer to the quarterback. I think that's the answer to the defensive backs. I think that's an answer in Byron Murphy on the defensive front. When all things are equal, regardless of what class they're in, who has the highest trajectory to get us to where we want to go?
So we got some really good numbers for you that's going to come out in the defensive back podcast, and I have them here. I just scribbled down some numbers that Clint was rattling off the other day. Pro Football Focus. Starting cornerbacks for Texas last year: 39 attempts, 27 receptions, 69%. 40 attempts, targets, 29 receptions, 69%. They were catching every 10 balls that the cornerbacks got thrown at them. The receiver was able to catch 7. And then we'll get deeper into yards per catch and who, was able to eliminate long gains when we start talking about corners. But I didn't want to drop names just yet, but have some statistics. And we've always talked about this. We believe that bigger corners allow you wiggle room. First off, they're the guys that can put hands on you at the line of scrimmage and reroute you and throw the quarterback and the wide receiver's time and all. They have the ability to get, if they have length, to get their hand in there when they're beat, to tap a ball away when the ball's coming to the receiver. So I've always loved big corners. I just think they're intimidating. Again, they'll beat you up at the line of scrimmage, play in and play out, and it'll have an effect over the length of the game. And if they have the same type of speed as a guy who's 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", and you can get them in a 6'1", 6'2", or 6'3" body, that's the guys I want out there playing. And I'm not discriminating against smaller guys. It's just 70% completion percentage against your cornerbacks. And Rod will talk about the, explosive play rate was above 50%. Like, the way to stop that is to put hands on people, to reroute guys, to throw that timing off. And that's where we need to go. Is the havoc rate needs to come up, pressure rate needs to come up, and we need to be playing press man coverage on the outside.
I lost my train of thought. I'll get it back here in a minute. I really did, because I was looking at this comment here, and I'm not going to pull the comment up, but I think when you hear less of a guy's name when a coach brings up other guys and what he's looking for in other, in a position, and they're not naming those names, they probably don't meet he probably doesn't see them playing on the defensive side of the ball or in his scheme. Again, it's just kind of one of those things. We talk about, 5'11" quarterbacks, 5'10" quarterbacks that have been around for a long time. we'll kind of see where it happens, where it works itself out, after fall camp. But I don't think you can. I don't. If you're not able to fit the scheme in which they want you to play, why are they playing them?
And everybody loves a pick six, right? Everybody loves an explosive play out of the defense, but those come about 2 times a year out of a particular player at most, or but at the same time, a 70% completion percentage, consistently getting beat, allowing the team to drive the ball down the field without, making them behind the chains is why Texas fans are frustrated about this defense. Is, like I say, no pressure on the quarterback, 5.2 yards per carry for the opposing team, 70% completion percentage. Like, this stuff has to get better. And I don't want to make this a sour show, not at all. But that's where we're at with this season. Like, we're done with the offense. We talked about them. We praised them. Best running back room in the country, possibly. Deepest wide receiver core in the nation, possibly. Explosive tight ends, athletic tight ends. One came from Alabama, produced there. One's a 5-star recruit. The offensive line got a loaded freshman class that's come in and made a good example of themselves, and they're pushing these seniors. But there's 2 sides to football, and unfortunately for us, this time of year, we chose to do defense last because we knew less about it. It comes up, and as you're writing these things, you see the wrinkles. Like, you want to be, as a Texas fan, this is a fan show. We do wear burnt orange on Saturdays, and we want them to win ball games. But you have to tell the truth about what you see and what your eyes tell you when you watch the games, and what you read in statistics and snap counts and limited production. And it's just got to change. Whether it's, like I said, I don't want to point the finger at the scheme just yet. I want these players to play better. I want these group of athletes that we brought in from the 2018, 19, 20, 21 class to play better, and trust that these 22 recruits that they brought into this program this past year fits the kind of mold and the scheme, but you got to get there. So those classes have to produce. You have to win ball games in order to keep coaches around. It's very simplistic to me.
So we actually went back, and when we were looking at those stats, we were looking at Pro Football Focus. I remember what my train of thought was now. And we're actually picking guys from other schools that did, that were really, really good cornerbacks at certain schools that went on to the NFL draft. And the average, Jeremy was talking about 60 to 70%. The average is about 30 to 40%. So you're looking at probably in every 10 balls that are thrown to a cornerback, 3 of those balls are caught. And I think a lot of that comes down to playing off the line. You know what I'm saying? If you're giving a guy 6-7 yards to get a free release, and then all of a sudden you've run him off the line, and all of a sudden you're coming back on a timing route. Those are easy completions, and I think that's where Steve Sarkisian got frustrated last year. Is you're just allowing these easy completions, and you got yards after catch and easy completions because your tackling's not good, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about coach. Let's get off defense for a minute. I knew this was going to happen. I put in the chat who wants to talk about what first. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Can I just thank these guys for being in here? I know we're up against some heavy hitters tonight. I know Josh Pate is on. I think on 3. There's some comments about Bobby Burton that I think on 3 may be doing live at the same time. So we really do appreciate you guys who stopped by to see us. I'm sure when those guys get out of that podcast at 8 o'clock or whenever they stop, they'll join us. But really appreciate you guys standing by us and joining us, these 38 folks in here. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. Please like the video. Again, normally we're running about 120 to 160 attendance, and this is a little slower night, so at least hit that like button so those folks who get out of those other channels or got other stuff going on, school's starting back up, I know folks are busy, please hit that like button so that those guys know that we produced something tonight, and they can come back and watch it at a later time. We really, really, really appreciate your attendance.
All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the coaches poll. 18, too high, too low, or just in the middle?
The coaches really respect the Big 12. I said that when you first told me that the other day. I was driving around at work, and you're like, yeah, Texas is 18 in the coaches poll, and they got 1 first place vote. I don't know who that voter is. I guess we'll find out after the college football playoff. They'll have the vote sheets for weeks for the coaches. Don't think they're the number 1 team in the nation. I'll disagree with whoever that coach is. But what I when I looked at that poll and you had Big 12 teams 9, 10, and 11 in a year where the conference is supposed to be down, right? And anybody can win it. That's what you're hearing. There's not much difference between 1 and 5 or 1 and 4, depending upon whatever Big 12 preseason poll you look at. 18, I think, is about where the country thinks that Texas is. They believe in the offense. They believe, just like the Texas fans do, they believe this offense is going to put up somewhere between 35 and 45 points per game. And is the defense going to be able to shut down the opposing offense and limit them to less than 35 to 45 points a game? And that's what you're going to be left with. So I think there's trust in the offense. There's limited trust in the defense, and that gets you right around 18. So they were fourth as far as Big 12 teams. They were down in that 20 tier. I figured they'd be 22, 23, just barely in the poll. I thought 18 was very, very, very respectful of the other coaches to put them there. And it's something to build on. You know, it's not a top 10 team. It gives you a little motivation. You have a ranked. And then we got Alabama week 2 after we play University of Louisiana Monroe. But I would have suspected they'd have been around 22, 23. They'd have put them in the poll, but they wouldn't have been as high as 18.
I'm kind of with Sports Talk Center, and I say this every year, man. I'm not going to say it's too high, because if the coaches believe you're number 18 in the country, hey, that's what they believe. You know what I'm saying? But to me, I'd rather come in unranked and improve yourself. You know, and Steve Sarkisian said that too. You know, preseason polls really don't mean anything. You are who you are. You know what I'm saying? It's a football team. And I agree with him. You know, I believe that we come in unranked, you have something to prove, versus, coming in 5-7 off a 5-7 season. And I went and looked at the poll. There's nobody close to a 5-7 season that's currently in the polls. I figured you'd probably be somewhere between 22 and 25 if you were going to be ranked. I didn't think we'd be ranked inside the 20, but I'm one of those guys that wish that we didn't come in ranked, and then you kind of work yourself towards being ranked.
And I think it comes back to that statistic we hear all the time, is Texas led more in the Big 12 than Oklahoma, only led in ball games, only less than 2 teams, and those 2 teams played in the Big 12 championship. I'm talking about Oklahoma State and Baylor. Like, Texas was in every football game, and folks will tell me they were in against Iowa State, but that game ended up being a blowout. Arkansas was never really a football game in the second half. But other than that, every game was tight. They blew double-digit leads in some of those games. And I think it just goes back to, if Texas could just have finished the ball games in which they led, they're walking out of Oklahoma, 5-1 after beating TCU in Oklahoma, then who knows where the season goes. But unfortunately, we're good for a good half, and then the brakes kind of fell off, or the wheels kind of fell off. So I don't know. I think that maybe where it comes from is they see the potential in this team, and see they got an award watch lister on just about every position on the offensive side. They see that potential, and coaches decided to vote them 18. But I think that may be where it comes from, is the respect, and it's Texas, and I don't know. I can't explain it other than that. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the freshmen that Stark talked about, in his press conference on Monday. He said on some of the freshmen, Stark said they're playing at a high level. In his eyes, B.J. Allen, Jaden Blue has grown a lot since spring practice. Obviously, him being out a year, him not playing his senior year, there's going to be some rust on him, different scheme, and so on and so forth. But they really like where Jaden Blue is, and B.J. Allen, which is a big deal, because he's one of your safeties and one of the defensive backs. Kind of see where it is this year. But you got some really good players playing behind, Cook and Jaron Thompson at this point. Well, really, it's the offensive line. Cam Williams, he named Cam Williams first, by the way. Cam Williams, so he likes big Cam Williams. Kelvin Banks, Cole Hudson, and DJ Campbell look comfortable. They looked apart. Looked like they belong early on. So that tells you what he believes in his offensive line. Again, these guys were highly recruited out of high school. And it tells you where his thought process is going into the first scrimmage. I think you're going to see one freshman on the one this Saturday. I think the first scrimmage is Saturday. I think you're going to see one freshman. It's going to be Cole Hudson. It's going to be starting with the ones. And then I think you're going to have 2 freshmen, probably Cam Williams, or not Cam Williams, but DJ Campbell and Kelvin Banks starting with the twos this Saturday in the spring. You think that's
Yeah.
that's the thing?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much we said we thought one freshman would start game one, and there's a chance there could be 3 upperclassmen or 3 returning guys, because when it includes sophomores in there too, guys that have been in the program, and 2 freshman starters at one point in the year. Yeah, we've seen the pictures that came out. They're muscled up. We already knew they were big. We already knew what the recruiting services felt about them. Again, Kelvin Banks being a top 10 recruit, DJ Campbell being the top 20, best recruiting class Texas has had on the offensive line in some time. So yeah, that's good to hear, that their head's not swimming, that they understand the playbook, that they're ready to compete for jobs, and it doesn't surprise me at all that they're down there and they're making a dent, and they're getting the coach's eye, and he respects them and thinks they're gonna play well on Saturday.
Do you think he names a starter after the first scrimmage, second scrimmage, quarterback?
Second scrimmage.
Second scrimmage.
Yeah.
I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think where there's smoke, there's fire, and it feels like there's smoke around, obviously Quinn Ewers and what he's been able to do. Steve Sarkisian likes where they're both at currently. He actually loves where they're both at. He said it's nice when you got a competition like this where they want to learn, they're taking notes, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I think Steve Sarkisian names the starter after the first scrimmage. I really do. Okay. I think if Quinn Ewers goes out and they said his RPO game is off the charts, he's able to make those throws he wants to make. If he's consistent throwing the ball down the field, I think all things equal on Saturday, if Quinn Ewers comes out on top on Saturday in the quarterback battle, I think he will name Quinn Ewers the starter after the first scrimmage on Saturday.
All right, that's a take. We'll see. We wouldn't have to really put out we could still put out a quarterback preview, but it wouldn't be a position battle really or anything like that. And like I said, we felt all along that Quinn was going to get the starting job. We felt like that since the spring game, and just see the potential in his arm, and felt like he was going to start. And yeah, it could very well happen. And it'd be one less storyline the players would have to stop answering. Coach would have to stop answering. Hey, it's solidified. He's the guy. And just move on. And then just start. I think the play distribution or the snap distribution in practice is equal right now. I think you start giving them 70-30, maybe start looking at 80-20 towards the end of fall. If that decision's made and that's who they choose, regardless of who they choose, I think the snap distribution needs to change pretty early to get them comfortable in the system.
Yeah, I think it comes down to snaps, with the ones. Timing is important with these wide receivers. He says it all the time. I don't want to throw to a quarterback that's standing still, right? They're easy to receivers standing still because they're easy to tackle, right? You're trying to get yards after the catch. And I think that comes with timing, and the more that you're with the same guy over and over and over again, that timing gets that much better. And that's also handoffs to the running backs, throws to the tight ends. And I think it affects the offensive line as well. So I think the sooner you can name a starter, it's easier to get that guy, like we were talking about, 80-20 snaps versus sitting here 50-50, and they're both going with the ones for the next 2 weeks. And then you only got 2 weeks left to spring or fall camp until your first game. So I think the earlier the better. I think the earlier the better. Get them snaps in there, get the timing routes down, get your handoffs to the running back right, get your RPO game correct, go 80-20, and then from that particular point, like you said, he's handed the football team off to somebody, and they know exactly. And
you don't have to have a quarterback controversy every year. You know what I mean? Like Sam, we knew Sam was going to be the starting quarterback from the time he took the job to the time he graduated. Same thing with Colt. Colt took the job as a redshirt freshman, had the job until he graduated. And again, we're bringing high-level recruits in here. So the competition in the quarterback room, Malik Murphy to be included, Arch Manning right behind him, like there's going to be plenty of competition in this quarterback room going forward. But quarterback competitions don't have to be a thing in the fall. You can pick a guy he could play well through the season, and he's just your guy starting back up in August. And that's when we'll know this program is ready to compete for trophies. Is when we're not having that discussion, because a lot of it does hedge on the quarterback, because this guy's exactly right. Like, we got one of the top receiving groups in the country. We have a top running back in the country. And again, it's going to be dependent on the offensive line's play, right? You got to block for the tailback, open up holes, let him do his thing. You got to give the quarterback time to get the ball down the field, and they're worthy. But the quarterback is the essential piece of the pie. You know, he's the guy that walks up, reads the defense, pre-snap, decides where it goes. And that's exactly what he's right. How he walks up, he knows the coverage, he understands the playbook and understands what his reads are and his progressions, and gets to them. Be a very, very, very successful season. So yeah, you get him as many snaps against your one defense as you possibly can, give him as many looks as you possibly can with the time you have left in the fall to prepare him for the season. Again,
yeah,
and going off, it's going to be Quinn, but whoever it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think going off what he's talking about here, I think Quinn just has I think he's going to open up the offense more than what you would have with Hudson Card, because of the throws he can make. You know what I'm saying? If you go back and look at, I think Hudson Card, and again, completed, I think 30% of his balls over, I think 20 yards or 15 yards. That's not good enough. You're not causing the safeties to have to back off, you know, and worried about the ball going over your head. So I think with Quinn Ewers' accuracy and be able to, you know, hit every possible throw on the field, I think it just allows you to open up your offense that much more. And that's what Steve Sarkisian wants to do. He says it. Hey, we need to be as good as we can at everything we do, so it makes the defense have to work that much harder to stop us. And I think Quinn Ewers gives you an opportunity to do that because of the throws he can make all over the field, to include the ones over the top like we've seen with Isaiah Nair in the spring game, which was probably one of the prettiest balls I've seen from any quarterback at Texas. Probably, hell, I can't remember, probably the last 10 years.
No, it's the arm talent's off the charts. Again, that's what gives him the leg up, is he can make every throw. Card's a competitor. Guys are in here talking about, well, if Card's been in the system long enough that they shouldn't be equal at this point. If it's equal, like you said, they give the guy with the larger upside the job and let him go do his thing. And then somebody said, you know, that Card will be a good teammate for Quinn Ewers. Again, he's been in the system a little longer. He'll just be a good teammate. He loves being a Longhorn, and he'll just be a good teammate.
That's it. I think that's important, though. As long as he's been playing football, he knows scheme, right? And he knows defenses. And I think it's important for someone that doesn't win a job, and it's got to suck. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit here and think that Hudson Card's just going to hand over the keys to the car and say, okay, I'm cool with it. You know, I think it's important for someone that's been in the system that long to help develop a quarterback. Because if you love your team that much, right? And you don't win the starting, you know, quarterback job, I think it's important to want to help develop that younger quarterback that's there. And I think he'll continue to do that. And then we'll kind of see what happens, you know, after the season with Malik Murphy and, you know, a whole host of other quarterbacks that we have either on the 40 acres or coming to the 40 acres soon enough.
Yeah, Drew just hopped over from IT. So I guess we were, you know, going up against the heavy hitters tonight. Again, we decide early on in the day whether we're going to have enough, you know, time to study up and get information to come on. So, yeah, so 7:30 tonight was when we were going to roll. Didn't know that other folks were out there dropping stuff at the same time. But again, Josh Pate and the guys from IT had a show tonight. So please hit that like button. So those folks that were watching that show, if they want an opportunity to come see us later, they'll know it was a pretty decent show and check us out. But appreciate you, Drew, for hopping in after IT.
So going back to when Ewers is making a lot of mental errors. If Card is improving, then he has a shot. I don't say he doesn't have a shot. What I'm saying is that it feels like Quinn Ewers is going to be the starting quarterback when you know, September 3rd when we, you know, when ULM shows up at DKR in Austin. It's kind of just where we feel it's what's going to happen. But again, with a freshman quarterback, you're going to, like Quinn Ewers, you're going to have to deal with some mistakes in games. He's a Aaron Rodgers type quarterback. He's a Patrick Mahomes type quarterback that's going to give you some wow moments, and then he's going to give you like, I can't believe he just threw that shit into triple coverage, sidearm, while he's running out of the pocket across the middle, and he's thrown the interception. It happens to every quarterback. It happened to Sam Ehlinger. I think his freshman year against I wish I could think. I could see the play down in the corner in the end zone where he threw an interception, and he probably just should have threw it out of the back of the end zone. But it ended the game like that. But I think you have to deal with some of the mistakes he's going to make, and I think Steve Sarkisian's okay if he thinks he can make this car run better with a better engine. I think he's okay with some of those mistakes.
And I think that's what Steve Sarkisian's offense allows you to do. And the talent that he'll have around him allows him to do is Xavier Worthy's going to get open. Jordan Whittington's going to get open. Bijan Robinson's going to win matchups, if he's not carrying the ball outside on a linebacker or a safety. Like his guys are going to win matchups. So, like I said, if he understands the pre-snap progression when he walks to the line of scrimmage, I don't think he'll get to 3 and 4 very many times and have to scramble out of the pocket and throw the ball into triple coverage. I really don't feel that. But yeah, he's going to trust his arm. Like I said, he's been blessed with a cannon, and he's going to think he can fit it into spaces when the it's not there for him, and the ball's going to get picked off. But I don't think it's going to happen near as much as we think it will. I don't think Steve Sarkisian's offense allows you to get to your 3rd and 4th progression that often, especially since with the speed that we have on the outside. I think our guys are going to be open. I think they're going to be open early, and if he knows where to go with the football, and the offensive line holds up and gives him time to throw, then I think that's going to be less than what we think it is. I mean, not to say that he's above, that he won't throw an interception, but I just think if he follows the game plan pre-snap, those things could be limited.
Working Man said Sam gambled too, and he absolutely did. I think you want a quarterback that's willing to gamble sometimes. You have a game manager, and then you got the one that needs to gamble, right? Like that wants to gamble, that wants to make those plays, and regardless of how close the wide receiver is to the cornerback, how what the coverage looks like. I think it's important to be a gambler as a quarterback to a certain extent. Now, I think there's over gambling, but I think it's important for your quarterback to have enough moxie, right, to think that he can make every throw, to wheel your team to victory. I think that's part of that gambler too, is to be able to wheel your team to victory.
And I think his offense is going to do that. His offense is going to take the top off of defense. Like Steve Sarkisian's offense is going to test the width of the field, and he's going to test the length of the field. And there's going to be plays in there that it's not going to look like, he gambled. It's just going to look like he took a shot, and with his arm talent, sometimes those shots are going to hit. There was a lot of times I was watching, I don't remember which game I was watching, but Jordan Whittington run down the sideline wide open, and Casey Thompson let him out of bounds. Like that was a big play that they missed. I think it was against Tech, and just leads him right out of bounds. And it was like, man, if Quentin Ewers is Casey Thompson, he leads it right over his right shoulder. Now, then again, this was pre-Casey's injury too, so I know he had some thumb injuries towards the end of the season. But there's plays like that in the playbook, like circle routes out of the backfield for Bijan running down the sidelines that they'll expose teams on. It's just, I think there's enough plays in the playbooks to take the top off of defense and challenge the safeties and back the safeties up. And I think every now and then we're going to hit one, especially with 18 back there, because you get the ball in his area code with his 6'3" frame, 215 pounds. He's going to win most of those 50-50 balls.
Yeah, real quick, Josh Young, Joshua, I'm not sure why you're not green. I'm gonna have to go back and look at our members and figure that out.
He's there.
We don't like that you're not green. You're there in the members,
we
right?
want you to be green. Yeah, he's there.
We want you to be. He's in the members. I just don't know why you're not green. So we appreciate you being a member, though, Josh. Man, we know you're green. You're green to us. Jeremy owes you a cut-off sleeve Texas Football Talk shirt, right? Or is it a hoodie? It's a hoodie.
He wants a sleeveless. No, a sleeveless. It might be a sleeveless hoodie, but I know it's sleeveless. He wants to show off his guns with the Texas Football Talk T-shirt. Again, we work at so many things right now, trying to get as much content as we possibly can. We did get solicited by someone today that we might be negotiating with to help sponsor the show. Working on a lot of stuff here. Let me run down real quick what we got going on now We got 60 folks in here. Please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And it's a perfect time to tell you that we have edge coming up. Again, we broke down the defense in 3 categories: defensive lineman, edge, and linebacker. So if you haven't heard names like Ovia Gofu, Barron Sorrell on the defensive line, they're coming with the edges. We're going to talk about DJ Harris, Prince Dorb, and all the freshmen. Then the linebacker show, again, DeMarvin Overshown, Jalen Ford, Devin Richard, DTD, all those guys will be talked about in that show. And then we're going to do DBs, but we're going to do DBs with corners and safeties. So you're going to get a DB show position preview with all the defensive backs. And then, of course, we're going to leave quarterbacks for last, unless Clint's guest comes through and Quinn is named quarterback after the first scrimmage, and then why wait? Just put it out. So that's it. And then Stephen Nagati from Fanatic Perspective, we're going to have him on our show on the 16th of the month. So I think that's next this day next week. So next Tuesday, Stephen will be on with us. And then we'll be on Locked On Longhorns podcast on the 19th. So Texas Football Talk is busy bringing folks on the show, going on other folks' shows. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please join the Inner Circle. Be a member. The football season's coming quick, and we want you guys to be a part of our channel. Thank you.
All right. Queen Bee's got a plug here. Hey, guys, plug in a signing. Sounds like they got Troy O'Meary, Alfred Collins, Devondre Sweat, Keandre Coburn, Anthony Cook, Vernon Broughton, Saturday, August the 21st at the Valhalla. I'm assuming that's in Austin. If you're not following Queen Bee on Twitter, she is an outstanding follow on Twitter. So you need to go over there and put your, if you don't mind, Candace, putting your at your Twitter in the comments so everybody kind of knows where to follow you on Twitter. I know she also has the Instagram as well. Not so much. I'm not sure how much Texas football content she has on there, but she's plugging a signing there. Go out there and see our guys. That's 21st, so Saturday the 21st. So thank you, Queen Bee.
So let me talk about this real quick. If Clint would let me have the controls for a second. I would definitely rock a TFT hoodie. We had a merch deal with Bonfire. If you go to bonfire.com and you go to Texas Football Talk, there is merchandise there. They're polo shirts of I think they're gray, white with our logo, Texas Football Talk logo on there. The wife is really working hard again to find a distributor of Texas Football Talk gear that's more diversified. Again, I'd like just the dry fit tees and stuff like that, stuff I can wear to the gym, just the more comfortable, not cotton polo shirts. So we are working on that. And then I saw Dre. So that's part of being a member of the Inner Circle. It's every game we will have a live chat open on our channel for Texas members, for Inner Circle members to talk about the game. And again, I'll be there chatting along with you guys, except for Oklahoma and Alabama. Oklahoma and Alabama, the mics will be on, the video will be on. We'll be streaming the game behind me, and then we'll go back and forth during those 2 games. Cameras rolling, like I said. That's part of being in that Inner Circle. Again, something else you get with the Inner Circle is I drop the lineup that I just gave everybody who's not a member of everything that Texas Football Talk is coming with over the next week. We try to let our members know that. And then if we have videos that we cut, sometimes we like to give them a sneak preview, let them have a look at it hours before we drop it to the masses. So that's what becoming a part of the Inner Circle is. Again, we're working with another merch distributing company to try to get more diversified line of merchandise out there. So please go to bonfire.com if you're interested in the cotton polo or t-shirt. If you're not, then wait for us to bring that other stuff online and we'll get you something.
Same thing. If you know anybody that may be in the merchandise, t-shirts, branding, any of those things, please let us know. You can send us a DM on Twitter or on Facebook, on our Instagram, and just let us know. Because if you know somebody that may be interested in helping us do that, obviously at a reasonable cost, we would definitely love to link up with those guys as well. Perry Rushing, I absolutely agree with you. Those live chats last year during the losses were rough. Absolutely. Let me tell you what's even worse. It's trying to get on a post game after a loss is even worse than being in the chats during the game. But we're going to get through it this year. We're going to get through it this year. We're going to have a winning football team. A lot more wins than losses this year. And I think if we're losing to Alabama, I can deal with a post game show after that. So we'll kind of see where it goes. But yeah, they're kind of rough, but they're enjoyable. When you're winning, you're winning. When the big plays happen, everybody's getting excited in the chats. So definitely come over there and join us.
So Scott Sheridan's brother, I guess, runs a merch, that bunker branding that Gamers Life is talking about. I guess Scott Sheridan's younger brother, that's his business. So yeah, hit us up, like Clint said, in the DMs of any of our socials, or hit us up at Texas Football Talk at Gmail with ideas, and we read all that stuff. And generally, the members can tell you if you send us a DM or send us an email, we respond within hours of receiving any kind of correspondence from any of you guys. So we just like to be engaged with the folks that are watching our show. And yeah, just if you can't hit us up on any of the socials, TexasFootballTalk at gmail.com. Just hit us up there.
All right, I like that. Let me see here. Did we figure out a way to get call in yet? Who's the guy, the Georgia guy, Jeremy, that does the call in shows?
Crazy Lou Uncle Lou.
Uncle Lou. I've watched this stuff before, and it would have to be a recorded show. There's no way that me and Jeremy would be able to do a call-in show and not know what's about to be said or asked on the show. It to me, how do you work that out? I think it'd be pretty cool, to do that. I just don't know how we could check to see what's being asked before somebody gets on our live show, because we definitely want to make sure that we don't kill our brand either. You know what I'm saying? With somebody saying something crazy.
Absolutely. Josh says live calls would be fun. Yeah, but we want to be able to remain on YouTube, Josh. They'd be fun for y'all to listen to. They'd be hard for us to explain.
Victor, the answer to your question, you all drinking the Kool-Aid this year? I can tell you, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the offensive side of the ball. I think our offense will be much improved. I'm gonna hold off on the Kool-Aid or watered down Kool-Aid or no Kool-Aid at all on the defense side of the ball. And if you went and listened to our defensive line preview, that's one of the first things I said at the beginning of the show is we got to take the burnt orange glasses off for this one, and we got to honestly hammer it out and tell the truth, because I think that's what's needed at this point. Yeah,
that's exactly how I answered it. I got burnt orange glasses on for the offensive side of the ball, and definitely don't for the defense. And special teams is a question. Not really worried about the kickoff team, punt team, but just the specialties. When I say team, I mean the guys run down to cover the kicks and the guys return the kicks. But again, you got a brand new punter and a brand new kicker. A little bit worried about that. There's 3 guys that are vying for the kicker job, and I think 2 guys that are vying for the punter job. But Cameron Dicker made it very easy to trust both aspects of that game, the special teams game. So yeah, replacing those 2 guys as well.
So they're saying the live calls, Gamers Live, just let the green people have the number for the first few shows, but need it live for sure. I have no clue how to do that. Like I wouldn't even know how to. We could barely get YouTube. It takes me and Jeremy 20 minutes to figure out how we're doing our studio every night. Now all of a sudden you want us to cue in a call and be like, all right, caller number 1, what do you have? And then we'll see. We'll see.
I don't even know how that works.
As the channel,
it'd be great for post game. It'd be great for post game. Like I don't know
what
for a show like this. I don't know if it would be that cool, because I think again we come on here with topics that we want to talk about, and of course the chat leads us other places. So we want to interact with you guys and hear what you guys think and talk about that. But post game would be, like you said, it's wild. And these games are at 8:00. These first couple are going to end at, I think it's 7:00 start. So I was thinking 11:30 for the post game shows is when we're going to start them. So those are going to be long nights, but we're excited to cover them for sure.
My first post game, the first post game, I will be in a hotel at Disney World in Florida.
Yep.
I've already told her, hey, I think we're going to Hollywood Studios that day, and we're old anyway. We're not, ain't nobody trying to hang out in Hollywood Studios till 10:00 at night anyway. We're usually there when it opens up. So, but she already knows we'll be back at the hotel well before 8:00 Eastern time because it's 7:00 Central time game, right? So we'll be back in the hotel room way before that, and then I'll be doing a post game live from the hotel room. Hopefully, it's ULM. Something really, really bad would happen for us to have a bad post game show for that one.
I'm glad Justin asked this because we've talked about Malik Murphy 3 out of the last 4 shows. I'm pretty sure we talked about how he could be the number 2 quarterback coming out of fall. We talked about don't necessarily have to hand the ball from whoever the starter is to Arch Manning, that Malik Murphy is a very talented young man who has hell of an arm talent, probably got the second best arm talent on the team right now. Maybe he could probably vibe with Quinn. I mean, hell, they both went to Elite 11 and competed against each other. So we talked about Malik Murphy and his upside. Didn't spend 23 minutes on it like Steven did, but trust him. We're going to talk about him in our position preview again. He'll be right along with Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card when we talk about that. But, yeah, for a kid who didn't get very many snaps in high school because of COVID and other things, and with his team injured to a California State championship, we believe a lot in Malik Murphy and think he's ultra talented. And, like I said, you're not necessarily handing off the ball from whoever's the present starter to Arch Manning when Arch Manning comes to town because this kid's going to compete and has a good shot at winning the job.
Candace here was thinking live game spaces would be fun. Won't get booted from those like YouTube. Those spaces, I don't think anything's going to get you kicked off of space because I walked into some spaces one time and it's like, and I last all of about 3 minutes and then not a lot's happening. People are screaming over the top of each other. But yeah, you could do one of those on spaces as long as you control the mics like Candace does. Candace is very good at controlling the mics in her spaces when she gets the players or the players' parents and stuff on there. But you got to control those. You got to control the mics. If not, it kind of gets out of control. I want to talk about Gray Man's question up here. See if I can find it. Is quarterback play and offensive play as bad as they say right now? I don't hear that unless what I heard from Steve Sarkisian yesterday is he loves where his quarterbacks currently are. And that's high praise compared to where he was at last year, and I think he said it that where they're at right now, where these quarterbacks are at right now compared to the quarterbacks we had last year at this same time, I think is reversed. I think he loves where the quarterback play is right now. The offensive line, he gives nothing but props to these young offensive linemen that we knew were probably going to have an opportunity to come in and start and replace some of these guys that probably didn't need to play this year. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, we already touched on the OL and the young ones' ability to compete for jobs, but I just want to read the quote from Steve Sarkisian on his quarterbacks, and I'm going to cut out the first part of it. But both of them are making some really nice plays, whether it's quick game, whether it's on audibles, whether it's intermediate throws, whether it's down the field throws. I think they're both playing with a lot of confidence, and that part is fun. So he feels really good about his quarterbacks, and he has a long list of quarterbacks that he's coached that are pretty doggone good in college football. So I'll take the coach's thoughts on how his quarterbacks are playing before I take any, media member that has limited practice availability at all. So they might be hearing it from other sources they have within the team. But I'll take it from the man himself who seems to like what they're doing.
I think if you set a high standard, then what is bad? You know what I'm saying? If you set a high standard of what you expect from your quarterbacks and what you expect from your offensive line, what is considered bad? Because one person may say it's bad, somebody may say it's good. I think it's subjective. I really do, based on whatever standard Steve Sarkisian set. But it's hard for me to think that he went from Monday, and the only thing that's changed is like you said yesterday, the only thing that's changed between yesterday and today is you put your pants on, How did it go from what he'd love to see in his quarterbacks, in their confidence to being terrible today? So I think honestly, based on sources and so on and so forth, I think it's subjective. I really do think it's subjective, and we'll kind of see as it kind of moves forward through fall.
Again, anybody that's putting out any content saying that they have a good idea of practice is we know about the availability for practice right now for the media. Jeff Howe chronicles it every day on 247 that there's not that much availability. They get 20 minutes of a 2.5 hour practice, and generally it's them throwing the guys on air. And again, you're not going to take much from that. Me personally, But there may be sources inside the program, whether it be coaches or athletic trainers or players on the team, that say the offensive line doesn't look good. Yeah, give me names. Who doesn't look good? If quarterbacks don't look good, like I said, I'll take it from the man himself, who tells me that he's confident and that they can lead this team to wins.
Yeah.
And Brandon just said exactly what I said. Pay sites need to get clicks. They don't have access to see enough practice, make an accurate assessment. And I'll just leave it at there.
Robert Muhammad, and I would have to look at the list of Big 12 quarterbacks, and I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I can name all 11 quarterbacks off the top of my head, which is probably pretty bad. But I have hard enough time getting information on Texas to give you an answer. Who are the Big 12 quarterback posted the toughest test for the Longhorns? I'll
tell you the style of quarterback. I'll tell you the style of quarterback. The guy that's dual threat, that busts the pocket. That's who's beat us like Caleb Williams, guys can get out of the pocket and scramble and make plays on the run. Remember TCU's quarterback, Max Duggan, burns us with his ability to run the football. Again, we got to put pressure on him, make him uneasy regardless of who's behind center. I think Oklahoma's quarterback, I'm not picking on him, but the quarterback they have up at Norman is probably not the strongest arm quarterback. He's pretty accurate if you give him time, but he's nothing we faced, coming out of that school in a long, long time. And then as you move down the conference,
I agree with that.
If Spencer Sanders is the preseason number one, all conference quarterback by most of the, whether it be Phil Steele's, Athlon, Lindy's, or all these other magazines I have on my desk, then nothing. I don't think there's a test out there that really is harder than any other. They played Spencer Sanders multiple times, especially this defensive front seven. They know what's coming after him. And I don't have a good enough assessment on the quarter. Like when we start doing pregame shows for the Big 12 and we have a chance to look at film, because like Clint said, there's guys moving in and out of programs. I think there's a lot of jobs to still be won within the conference. So I'll give you a better assessment on that, as the game weeks come up.
So I pulled it up. So based on quarterbacks, like you said, Dylan Gabriel, I think the quarterbacks we played at Oklahoma over the last couple of years are more talented than Dylan Gabriel. He's a left-hander, and I feel if you're going to get opportunities for interceptions against Dylan Gabriel, because I think he has an extended left throwing motion that feels like it takes forever to get to the wide receivers. I'm going to say Adrian Martinez posts that threat you're talking about. They can take off and run and create chaos. And then Spencer Sanders is another one. And then, right now, the one I'm looking at, Max Duggan versus Chandler Morris. We know what Max Duggan's done to us before. So those are the three that I would say that are probably going to give you the hardest time, because they're mobile quarterbacks that can make plays on the move.
Yeah, just ready to get it all started, get all these questions answered.
But I wish I'd have had that up before I pulled that question up, been prepared. I want to go back and watch. I know that Anthony Cook and Whittington put out a video today. Interested in seeing that. We hadn't had an opportunity to watch that yet. Sounds like, according to Jordan Whittington, we have a Debo Samuel on team and Savion Red. High praise for a freshman. That's where they kind of seen him at as a tweener between a running back and a wide receiver.
He did everything at Grand Prairie. His game film show, he lines up all over the place. And somebody asked about Mikael Harrison-Pilot versus jalquez Petway a lot earlier in the show, in comparison of who's better, and they're different athletes to me. They do like jalquez Petway reminds me of, he's a speedster that gets elusive at the line of scrimmage, gets downfield, makes 50-50 ball catches, can run away, and then it just looks like Mikael Harrison-Pilot. They like to hit him across the field. You'll see him line up at running back. He plays safety. Like he's everything. That's why he's listed as an athlete on the recruiting services. But I think they're two different players. For this system, I think I would have rather had jalquez Petway. He's kind of like that Jonte Cook, Ryan Niblett type receiver. But Mikael Harrison-Pilot's a damn good football player.
Working man, talking about the quarterback again, the one that comes in the second quarter who we didn't prepare for. That is true. We do have a hard time, like when adjustments when a quarterback comes in that you weren't prepared for. It's like it all falls apart. That's
because somebody said that a little bit. Yeah, somebody said that a little bit earlier about second half collapses being undisciplined, and I think that has something to do with it. I think freelancing and not doing what your assignment asks you to do on the defensive side of the football that entered Texas's. That was part of their MO last year, trying to make plays that weren't there and just needed to do their job and not someone else's. But the lack of making adjustments on both the offense and defensive side, like they beat us with the same things over and over again in games. Like Baylor was their inside run game and the stretch game. Oklahoma, it was more busted plays and deep balls from like you said from Williams. But it was just like you couldn't stop it. Once the bleeding started, you couldn't find a way to stop it. And so in discipline, I agree with that aspect, but I think a lot of it was our inability to make adjustments on the fly.
All right, we're going to start doing this. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, before we kind of end the show, because we get your idea on who your breakout players. So me and Jeremy, during our last live with Nino's Corner, kind of talked about a breakout player. I'm going to put some parameters around that because I'd like to know who your parameters are. I'm going to give you the same one. Jeremy chose, I think we chose freshman, sophomore on the defensive side of the ball, or defensive line, wasn't it? And you picked Barron Sorrell. And then I picked Justice Finkley. I definitely like to know who their breakout player is on the defensive line, but it has to be either a freshman or sophomore, or someone that has been around the program for a while. Try to think of another question here while we're started. Let's do breakout player on the breakout player defensive backs. Again, let's put parameters around it. You have to be a freshman or a sophomore and didn't have a lot of impact or a lot of time or a lot of snaps over the last couple of years. Who you got?
And while they're answering this one, I'll pull up Muhammad. Any plans to do a post-game collaboration with Nino Fanatics Perspective or Texas Homer? Robert, we're just trying to get to the week. Again, if you heard my little brief a little bit earlier that I gave, or the rundown, we have Steven coming on the 16th from Fanatic Perspective, and we're going to be on Locked On Longhorns on the 19th. It would be up to their availability. I think some of those guys attend games. Of course, we live a little bit further out than Austin, and we like doing the post-game shows and watching the game from the house and interacting with you guys during games. But we like to go on right after the game, like 15 minutes post-game, just long enough to set up the studio and get ready, kind of look at the stats and go. I don't know if those guys, if it would fit their timetable on game days, but we could definitely ask them if they would be willing to do that for a game such as like Oklahoma or Alabama. I don't think they'd be willing to do it every game, but maybe a special game we could get them on to do post game on the channel. Because, like I say, we all work well together. We've all been on each other's shows. Homer really doesn't do a whole lot of live stuff. Most of his stuff is video. But again, we'll have Steven on the 16th.
All right, your breakout defensive back, freshman, sophomore. Who you got?
For me?
Yep.
Jahdae Barron. And I stole it from the numbers that you gave me the other day about completion percentage and ability to tackle and what he's done. And I think if he could carry that over what he's done in a small sample size to full games, I think he's definitely going to make a lot of plays this year. I'm gonna start going first, or we're gonna start flipping. Yeah,
because you took my guy Jahdae Barron. All right.
Well, you have the question. You made up the question. It's a surprise to me, so you should have already had your answer.
I do, but you take them when you go first. All right.
Okay.
So my second guy is I got to go with our Port Arthur guy down there. I'm gonna go Jaylon Guilbeau. I think he's gonna get a lot. I think he's gonna get quite a bit of playing time. So I'm going with Jaylon Guilbeau. I've went with freshmen both times now as breakout players, Finkley and Jaylon Guilbeau. I just think he's gonna get a lot of playing time. I think it's what he plays exactly the way Steve Sarkisian wants the defense backs to play. And I think you'll see a lot of Jaylon Guilbeau, Jahdae Barron, and Ryan Watts at cornerback and nickel when it's all said and done this year.
Something that Sports Talk Center just put up. His is Chris Ross up front. Loved his tape at Galena Park North Shore. I loved it too. He was one of those guys who was, hovering around, not even ranked going into his senior year, and just blew up. And then J.D. Coffey from the Metroplex as a safety. I like both those guys. But kind of did a disservice to the defensive line, the end of the defensive line podcast, when we didn't talk about 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗘, Chris Ross, and Aaron Bryant. And I was talking to Clint the other day, and I think we may have mentioned him, but we didn't really talk about him. So 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘, 6'4", 261, a freshman. You know, I think I heard Steve Sarkisian talking about his get off the ball. You know, if I could just get it, you know, he has interior quickness and has a good pass rush. He's talking about him and Byron Murphy. And then Christopher Ross, same thing, 261 and 265 pounds. So I'm just interested to see where they play 94 and 97. Are they going to be in that more Jomo defensive end type role, or are they going to slide them down to the 3 technique? And then the guy that's 307 pounds, Aaron Bryant, the kid out of Mississippi, again, he's 307 pounds, so I suspect he'll play 3 technique in this defense. And I don't really know how much playing time these guys are going to get in early. But again, you've heard Coach Sarkisian already talk about 𝗟𝗜𝗞𝗘 in a press conference. So he's getting noticed. But I thought we just kind of brushed over those guys because I just don't know how prepared Bledsoe and Ross are going to play and where they're going to play at their current size. Because you can't – I don't think they're that defensive end type that you're looking for currently. But I don't think they're big enough to slide inside. So I'll be interested to see where these guys play.
Yeah. Talking about J.D. Coffey, there's quite a few guys out here talking about, you know, J.D. Coffey in the back end. And you're right. If you go back and look at what he did last year, in the short amount of time he had, he did really play really well. I just don't know at that safety position currently where he's at on the 2D, because you're looking at Anthony Cook, you know, I think is pretty stable back there at safety. The guy calling the plays for the defensive backfield. And then you currently have Jaron Thompson and you have Keaton Crawford that I think is backing him up. So I just don't know how much playing time outside of probably ULM and hopefully UTSA these guys are going to get. Because I truly believe, and this is no shot at J.D. Coffey, but I think if J.D. Coffey's coming in to play safety for Anthony Cook or Jaron Thompson or Keaton Crawford, we're back in the same situation we are with this defensive backfield. Somebody's not making plays the way they need to be making plays. But we'll kind of see where we're at with that.
Dre, I had this same question. So something I don't understand about our defense is what's the difference between our D ends and our linebackers? Because to me, they're the same size, and you're completely right. And so I kind of talked to David Gabinda about this too at the Burn Orange Heroes thing. It's hard for me to figure out in a 3-3-5 or in a 2-4-5 who are designated ends and who are linebackers. Then they talked about moving DeMarvion Overshown down to edge. Like, who are your true edge players? And so had to go to TexasSports.com and actually go to the roster and break down who they classified as a defensive lineman. And I'm talking about 1s, 3s, and their defensive end that they call the Buck. And then the Jack is their version of a linebacker, but he's on the line of scrimmage. So they break them down in defensive line, edge players, and linebackers. And that's how we decided to split up the position previews. Was you got the defensive linemen, the ones they classify as defensive linemen on, I think it was Sunday we dropped that. And then so the next one will be the edge players. And if you missed it a little bit earlier, that's going to be Barron Sorrell, Ovia Gofu, Harris, Dorba, Tapp, Finkley, Burke, and Swanson. And then whoever's out of that group is going to be the linebackers. Again, Derek Brown, I was surprised. He played defensive end at Texarkana High. They got him classified as a linebacker. And I know he's slight. He's only 210 pounds. And I think I heard him say the other day when he came on campus, I think he was talking to Darian Collette. He told him, man, they're going to get you big because when I came here, I only weighed 193 pounds. They've already put 17 pounds on me. So it was hard for us to differentiate because, again, this scheme moves everybody around. Trying to create mismatches, and there's really no in a system where it's a 6-man front 7 because the star is generally a defensive back, but he can be in the box too. It's hard to pinpoint where exactly these guys should be slotted in a thing like a position preview when you're trying to focus on nose tackle, defensive ends, because again, like you said, one of those guys is a linebacker.
Yeah. Brandon is talking about PK likes to have massive humans in defensive line that require doubles to block and allow the Jack and Buck along with the linebackers to attack at random. The edge will be asked to cover times, but it sounds like that he wants to see them get an interior pass rush, not just take on these blocks. I think a lot of people say, okay, well, I just want you to take on a block, I want you to take out 2 offensive linemen so it opens up a gap so the linebacker can to fill that gap or do what's necessary to stop the run or get a pass rush. But it sounds like that Steve Sarkisian is getting to the point where we expect these defensive linemen to get some kind of pass rush, not just take on a double team, but, the interior guys to be able to, push the pocket up and make these quarterbacks, uneasy. So it gives your outside defenders an opportunity to rush around, the rush lanes to get to the quarterback. So that's what we need. I need to see some interior pressure. Regardless if you're taking on 2 blocks or not,
push the pocket.
You have to be able to push the pocket back. A stalemate is a stalemate, but when you're being pushed into when you're being pushed into the linebackers and there's no gap to fill, then that's where you have issues. But there, at a minimum, needs to be a stalemate, or you're pushing the pocket, inside. And I just don't think you've seen a lot of that last year.
And this one came up the other day, and we talked about BJ. But I had read that BJ Foster was playing while pretty banged up, and that's why he didn't meet expectations. BJ Foster tore up both shoulders. And everybody says, well, he shouldn't be playing that position. I always said he couldn't cover CeeDee. The day I saw CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb's a hell of a receiver. But when BJ Foster was in the slot with CeeDee Lamb against Oklahoma, that was the day I decided he probably should have been a linebacker. But again, he was injured. So the 5-star guy from Angleton who transferred to Sam Houston State was no longer a 5-star. And that's the thing is, guys say you bring guys like him in the program and they don't produce. Injury got in his way. When I watched him play at Angleton, I thought him and DeMarvin Overshone, I felt like DeMarvin was 6'4" and 215 when he's playing Under Armour, and BJ was like 6'3". I don't know if he's that tall, but he was just a playmaker. And I thought if we could spin these guys down, because at the time you wanted linebackers that were 215 to 225. We still recruited to that model at this time because of the edge and the outside backers and the ability to cover. But I thought those guys would be more suited for linebackers since they moved to DeMarvin. But I said this the other day about BJ Foster. When he came out of Angleton, I thought he was the best player in that class. And that class had Caden Stearns, Shaylin Green, Anthony Cook, and the guys we just talked about. And I think his shoulders, he always played with a shoulder brace since he was a freshman because he was a launcher, right? He wasn't really he liked to hit people and put them on the ground. And it was a detriment to him, and he couldn't play at the level that he probably could have without the injuries. I totally agree with that. Yeah,
so Terry Freeman, this is, again, I think PK's being forced to change it up this year. Last year's scheme won't cut it, and I don't know what the quote is if you do the same thing over and over again and it gives you the same
results.
It's
insanity.
It's insanity. So I think he knows he needs to change it up, and it sounds like they're going away from the worrying about double teams and really worrying about gaps. And I think that's important. But at the same time, that's why you get, Pete Kwiatkowski to say, hey, or go to Sarkisian and say, hey, can you set up a meeting with Dan Quinn and so that I can see how he's using his personnel to his advantage. That's why you do that. But I also think, Brandon, what Brandon's saying is that
on this one, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you touch on this one.
Okay, because it makes perfect sense. And Brandon, I think this is the first time we've seen you in our show. So we really appreciate you joining. We really appreciate you joining, and you've come with some pretty good heaters here. PK scheme is fine. Again, you said what I said a little bit earlier. He needs his players to run it. I do agree that he currently doesn't have that, kind of what we said earlier, but the Gary Patterson thing, right? So Gary Patterson at TCU had to play with undersized guys out of traditionally we thought were out of position and did more with less. And I think you're spot on here, and I didn't think about it till you said it, is how we're talking about moving Alfred Collins from 3 technique to outside back to 3 technique. I think Gary Patterson in this self-scouting role has probably, and again, we don't see practice. The guys who are invited to practice only get to see 20 to 25 minutes of a practice. And so I don't know what those changes are going to be, but I feel like Gary Patterson's influence, when he goes back and watches an Alfred Collins as a freshman and sees him do what he does as a 3, and then he looks at his film last year and he sees what he does as a defensive end, those conversations are probably being had. Hey, what do you want to do with this player? And I pick on that one because to me it's the easiest to see, and I'm sure there's others out there, and I'm sure you guys have seen him, probably bring them up. But they have those discussions. And how can we make this player mold or fit our scheme a little better? Or how do we adjust our scheme to fit the skill sets that we have on the defensive line and in the linebackers? So I think a lot of that scheme may come out with the assistance of Gary Patterson. I know he'll probably get a lot of the credit if this defense does make a major upgrade, and it's probably due to his analysis of it. And again, why wouldn't you want a guy like that on your staff who's shown the ability to be a great defensive coordinator at a team where he didn't always have 4- and 5-star recruits, who sends guys to the NFL, who develop players? And somebody talked about that earlier about PK's sexiness and compared to Steve Sarkisian's offense. Nobody doesn't have sexy because he hasn't had any players drafted from the University of Texas. Like you said, when Steve Sarkisian has to show a kid, that's a current recruit Texas offense, he has to show him Najee Harris and the receivers and the Jerry Judys and the Ruggs and Jalen Waddles, and say, I can make this for you, because he doesn't have any draft picks on the offensive line or offensive side for Texas yet either. Pete Kwiatkowski's got to do the same thing with Washington. He's got to go back and show him, Buda Baker and all the defensive linemen, Danny Sheltons and the guys that he put in the NFL to try to sell it. But yeah, I think Gary Patterson may have that kind of positive influence in getting these guys back into positions that suit them, or talking to them about, hey, man, we might need to think about how we do things here with the current players that we have on this football team.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Horn 7. Love the channel. Ready for some real football. So are we. I think we're right down to about 24 days and about 23 hours at this point, 22 and a half hours from kickoff. So definitely excited about that. Answer a couple more questions, and then we're going to exit here. And, see me look up. Door never opens up until it's hey, are you done yet? So Robert Muhammad, do you think we'll alternate defensive linemen every other series since they're pretty deep there? I think it's just one of those things where I think the snap count difference between 𝗟𝗓𝗏 Coburn and Byron Murphy last year were 100. I think one ran 489 snaps. Coburn ran 489 snaps, and Murphy ran 389 snaps. So it's a 100 snap difference between those two. So I think traditionally defensive line are going to be, asked to come out, but you hope that you have players that aren't only 2-down linemen. You want the 3-down linemen, the guys you keep in the game for 3 downs versus 2 downs, and you got to bring pass rush specialists to get it on passing downs to get a rush.
Is depth manufactured because your better players are currently your second team and your first teamers, the guys you've heard their names for years? That's not depth to me.
Yeah, it's true.
Is it depth because we've heard 𝗟𝗓𝗏 Coburn, Devondre Sweat, Alfred Collins, and Moro Ojomo for year after year after year, but we're hearing the names like Byron Murphy and Vernon Broughton, and these guys are the guys that are producing in practice? I just don't know if we have – yes, we have bodies that have played football games for the University of Texas over the past couple of years, but does that make us deep? Or is that just the same 7 guys that we're going to rotate in with no better product on the football field?
I couldn't have said it.
That's
that's
a
perfect.
question.
That's perfect. And again, that defensive line preview that we put out this week, we talk about that specifically. Again, the proof is in the pudding. Until you see it on the field, it's hard for me to say that this group is deep because of the lack of production in the numbers from last year from your guys that started versus your guys that came in that had less snaps than the guys that started. Because if you look at it, and again, this is one of those things where Byron Murphy had the same amount of tackles, more tackles for loss and more sacks than 𝗟𝗓𝗏 Coburn last year with 100 less snaps.
Why is there no double A gap blitz? Why did the defensive linemen, why don't they stunt? It's just a 3-man rush versus 5-OL. Again, that's what Clint was talking about earlier, is that they want the defensive linemen to take on double teams to allow the linebackers to gain a rush or to be free. If you're blitzing from the second level every single time, you're not going to get there, especially in these quick passing attacks. They're going to get the ball in their hands before a linebacker can get there, unless you completely beat a guy off the line of scrimmage. But if a running back is protecting or they got a tight end, that's going to change too. They do have to play more games, and again, I think they have to scheme it up better than they did last year. There were limited adjustments in the second half. Like I said, when we were bleeding, we couldn't stop it, and a lot of that has to like all gas no brakes needs to be defense's thing, not offense's thing. I think offense can do what they got to do to get and walk on. They can literally. And this is burnt orange glasses, but I think you guys will agree. They could literally roll their helmet out on the field and score 35 points.
All right, last question for the night.
Everybody.
All right, last question. Go ahead,
Alabama, maybe.
All right, last question tonight. Tyler Justice, buy or sell. If our defense improves at least mid-pack, our offense is potent enough to make the Big 12 title push. 100%, absolutely. If your offensive line is average to good, your defense is going to run on all cylinders. Your defense is middle of the pack. I say anything better than 70, you really have an opportunity to win a Big 12 championship, because I think your offense is going to have an opportunity to put up 38-plus points a game. And if you can't win your games at 38-plus points, your defense is a disaster again. So, all right, man, great show. I got a dog scratching the door. The wife is coming here and give me the glaring eyes, like, hey, it's time to get off. So we're gonna call it a night. We appreciate y'all listening as always. Thank you. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed. If you're interested in becoming a member, hit that join on our page, YouTube homepage. It'll kind of give you an idea of what we're offering there. But we appreciate y'all as always. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk. You can find us on Instagram at Texas Football Talk and on Twitter at Texas Football Talk. Thank you for listening as always, and y'all have a wonderful night. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.